Hi guys, I'm so sorry that I haven't had a video in 2 weeks. It's been a hectic time. Yes, Gracie decided she wanted to be in the video today. Um, where I've been having very busy weekends, and which, is not really a bad thing. It's nice to have a busy weekend. I'm enjoying this season. Um, but it's also been kind of tough mentally because I'm going through some unusual flashbacks. Um, in the beginning of my trauma therapy, going through therapy and working through the memories, I did have flashbacks of the memories themselves and what happened and such. And I guess I was not really feeling the memories, going through the feelings. I was just going through the memory itself and the trauma associated with the memory. And so now that I'm well over a year out of being away from my ex, my body is starting to realize that, hey, you're safe now. You're safe. You're not living on 24/7 fight or flight. You can feel those feelings now. And part of the issue with me going through the flashbacks of, my goodness, you're shedding. Um, the flashbacks of the feelings. I've been feeling the emotions of the flashbacks as if I had just had it. I mean, if as if the particular situation just happened, and it's kind of taken me for a loop because I didn't expect that. Although it makes sense because for so many years I wasn't allowed to have feelings. If I had feelings, they were either dismissed, belittled, or I got into deep trouble over the feelings. Um, the feelings got used against me. Um, the last, I guess, about 2 years of my marriage, if you want to call it that, um, it he used anything against me that he could. He used the fact that I was raped against me. He used the fact that my self esteem was below sea level against me. He used anything he could to get reactions out of me. Well, when I caught on that he was doing that purposely to get a reaction, I started controlling my emotions, or doing the best I could to control the emotions so I wouldn't give him the reaction he was seeking. In some instances, I gave him some emotion because if I didn't give him any emotion, that would start a whole other huge fight. So I learned to give him some emotion, enough to satisfy that desire, that twisted desire, but not enough to give him exactly what he wanted. And I mean, case in point, there was one particular time he was acting suicidal. He wasn't. But he wasn't suicidal, but he was acting it. Now, I have the utmost empathy for those who have contemplated suicide and are in a position where they feel that's an option. I have the utmost sympathy for those people because, quite honestly, as I've mentioned in a previous video, I've been there to an extent to where I considered it. I never went through with it. I never actually started planning anything, but it was something I was thinking about because I was such in deep trauma and abuse that I felt it was the only way out. So I have the utmost sympathy and empathy for someone who is in that position. But he wasn't. I knew him long enough to know that it was an attention grabber in this case. He would do anything he could to grab attention, to take any attention away from me and put it all on him. Because that's what he was. He was a narcissist. Still is, as far as I know. So he was acting like he was suicidal, saying that he wanted to kill himself, again, because of me, because I'm supposedly so terrible. And inwardly, I know I was rolling my eyes because I know that he wasn't. And we had gone through this song and dance, literally song and dance, so many times that I became hardened to it, really. And I guess he realized that, even though I was trying to show some emotion, I was still hardened to it to the point where it wasn't really affecting me. I wasn't really worried. I tried talking to him, saying, okay, we could talk about this, what's going on. All the stuff I've done before just to act like I was sympathetic when I wasn't. And at least not to him. Well, then he told me it was loaded, that the gun he had was loaded. And from my angle, I couldn't tell if it was or not. And he's done that before where he's loaded it and put it up to his head, so I had every reason to believe that he did. And he put the gun to his head and he said, how about if I just shoot myself right now, right in front of you, and all my blood and guts and brains will come all over you. Because I was relatively close to him at that point, in proximity. And I'm like, no, you don't need to do this. What would happen? You know, your family needs you, yada yada. And he pulled the trigger. And when I heard that click, of course I reacted because, you know, in that second, you don't think logically, okay, it's a click, not a bang. So, you know, because you just hear the click. And you know what that click means, that he pulled the trigger. Well, he didn't have a bullet in it, obviously. And I'm like, I screamed and I was shaken, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, yeah, you were scared only because afraid that you would get in trouble if I killed myself in front of you, because the authorities would come looking for you, because they know it would be under suspicious circumstances. I realize now he used that to control me. That's one of the reasons I stayed so long, was because I was afraid he would kill himself, or at least try, and then it would go back on me. It wasn't until I did a little research of my own that I realized, no. Not to mention, yes, there have been precedences where people responsible for someone committing suicide had been charged, but those were extreme circumstances where it was very obvious. And secondly, enough people knew me to know that I wasn't nearly as bad as he was saying I was. I'm by no means perfect, but I wasn't the monster he was claiming I was. Not to mention when he started bad-mouthing me on the internet, because like I've told y'all before, I had to completely deactivate a Twitter account that I had because he totally doxed me on Twitter. Because on Twitter I never went by my real name, and for obvious reasons, and he put my real name out there and said all kinds of other horrible things, to where one of the people that I was following that was following me saw all this and actually messaged me. And this was an individual that was a Christian police officer on the East Coast, and he went by an alternate name for obvious reasons, being a Christian police officer. And he messaged me, and he was really worried. He was about ready to use his expertise and his pull to try to locate me, to at least call the local authorities to do a wellness check on me. I had answered him just in time, said, no, I'm okay, I'm safe. But, I mean, this is how he did. And so when he started doing all of this foolishness, or what it is, stupidity, I started talking, because the way I felt was, if he were to do something so stupid as to try to kill himself just to make me look bad, which even to this day, I wouldn't put it past him to do something like that. I wanted it out there that my side of things, to at least put some doubt in all of what he said. But getting back to the gun incident, I still, even after he did that, and I was horrified, I still kept my emotions in check as much as I could, because I didn't want to give him the full brunt of what I was really feeling inside. Because had I reacted the way any average person would have, oh, he'd have been jumping for joy inside, and he would have gotten exactly what he wanted, and then that would have only encouraged him to do something like that again, or something worse. So I gave enough emotion to show him that I had the emotion, that, I cared, but not enough to give him exactly what he wanted. And that's what I had done for the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years maybe, of our marriage. He would, when the normal things that he was doing, well, not normal to everyone else, but normal to him, when the typical things, is a better word, that he was doing was no longer affecting me because I had gotten hardened to him and used to him, that's when he started doing other things that, to step up the game, so to speak. Excuse me. And so he started getting crueler and crueler. And up until recently, I hadn't been able to talk about the things he had said. It had to do with my weight. It had to do with any number of things. He knows that my weight I struggle with as far as self-esteem and my looks. And so he would use that. And I'm not going to go into specifically what he had said, especially about my weight. Because one, I don't want to trigger somebody. Because the things he said were absolutely horrible. And I don't want to trigger anybody that's watching this that is going through trauma right now. Because some of these things I guarantee you would trigger you. And secondly, I don't want to say some of these things and run the risk of some of you who have children happen to walk by or whatever and hear some of these things, because they are not meant for children's ears. But I will say that I have started talking about them to very trusted friends, because I've noticed that the more I talk about it, the less power it has over me. And so with each time I talk about it, it affects me less and less, to where I'm becoming desensitized to it, which is a good thing. But to give you an idea, one particular thing that he told me that was beyond cruel. The few friends I've told this, and I even finally got up the courage to tell my therapist this, because it's not something I like to talk about in mixed company. I'm just old fashioned like that. Everybody, my therapist was in the fact that I've been with him for a year. Been going to him for a year. I know his reactions and stuff, and he was trying not to react. Um, because he wanted to try to help me feel comfortable in completely divulging everything that was said. But I could see it. He was doing his best trying not to react. And everybody else that I told, their eyes literally were like this big. I had one friend that was like, he did not go there. And I'm like, oh yeah, he did. And everybody was horrified. And that was also comforting, because though I knew it was horrible what he said, having others feel the same way was a comfort to me, in the fact that I knew I wasn't being melodramatic. Because that's something I deal with. And I talk to others who that are trauma survivors, different types of trauma, but they go through the same thing, or they're going through the same thing, where they think their feelings, they're being over dramatic. when, quite honestly, I am not being dramatic enough, for lack of a better term. Um, and so my long-winded way of saying all of this is that for at least 2 years, the last 2 years of our marriage, all my feelings were suppressed because I couldn't react like I wanted to or like an average person would have, because he would have gotten what he wanted and then only encouraged him to do more. Um, Ironically, by not giving the reaction he wanted, he got dirtier and dirtier. But had I given him the reaction he wanted, it still would have encouraged him to get even dirtier still, because it was like it seemed like it was a thing to him, like a game to see what more reaction he could get from me. Um, Case in point, when we had a desktop computer, this was many years ago, I would say about 8, 9 years ago, I think is safe to say. We had a desktop computer, and he started showing horrible pictures on the computer just to get a reaction out of me. When he was mad at me, he would do that. And I started getting desensitized to that. And then also, I started learning to expect it. So I started looking just above the computer, where you can look at something but not see it. Um, just so I wouldn't be horrified, because these were horrible pictures. Oh my goodness, they were horrible. Some of them were horrible, creepy looking clowns that the clown in It looked like Bozo the clown comparatively. So I have an issue with clowns now because of it. Um, so then he started to when I started becoming desensitized, because I started expecting him to do it. He would do things like, we would be in a fight and then appear to have calmed down. I go in the other room for something or other. I come back out into the living room where the computer was, and bright as day. Sorry about that, y'all. I forgot to turn my phone off and I had to take that call. But so I would come back into the room thinking things were calm, because I'd go in the room for something, whatever, get dressed or whatever, come back out not expecting anything because it had been calmed down, or so I thought. Bam, light as clear as day, some horrible image of either a person totally mutilated, um, or stock photos from police investigations where a person had been horribly beaten, blood, guts, everything all over the place. I mean, you get the idea. So of course I'd go in the living room, not expecting anything, and lo and behold, I see this. And of course it would horrify me. And I would react to it, because it would put me in a flashback of my past trauma before him. So he was getting the reaction he wanted, and he loved it. I mean, he was a sick, twisted individual. Well, I caught on pretty quick that he was doing it for the reaction. So I literally would and try to anticipate every time that I thought he was going to do it. I became really good at predicting when he was going to do it. Also, because he was pretty predictable to begin with. Um, and so I was able to prepare myself before it happened and then not give him the reaction he wanted. And he was like, "You're becoming desensitized to it." I'm like, "Well, I've seen it so much." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to have to start doing something else." And I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" But so living on that 24/7 fight or flight for actually 20 years straight, I don't believe it's a lie or even an exaggeration to say at least for the last 20 years of our marriage, I was living on some sort of fight or flight. Um, and then the last 2 years, or gosh, actually the last 5 years of our marriage, I was living on heightened fight or flight to where I was thinking in my head every little scenario of what he could be doing, what he could be thinking. Um, couldn't even watch a movie, rent a movie from Redbox or whatever, throw it in a DVD player, and I couldn't even enjoy the movie because I was actively looking for possible triggers. So I couldn't even enjoy the movie because of that. I was looking for possible triggers that I would have to run interference for to either distract him or um, something to hurry up and de escalate him about to blow like a volcano. And so living like that in heightened fight or flight for the last 5 years, your body reacts. I just learned this term the other day. Your body goes into hardened armor, where your body tenses up and prepares for a something to happen. So it's taken a year for my body to relax and realize, oh, wow, she's truly not having to live in fight or flight. Things have settled down. Oh, wow. Okay, so now she's ready to start feeling these feelings. And so now I'm going through flashbacks again, but it's flashbacks of the feelings that were associated with a particular trauma or a particular incident. Um, like, when was it? This, not yesterday, but day before yesterday, I had a memory triggered. Um, being it's close to July 4th, Yahoos are starting to pop off fireworks. Well, I'm working during the day because I work from home, and I hear what sounds like a firecracker. I wasn't sure if it was a firecracker or a gun, and because it was pretty loud. And at first, I tensed up, and because of course it startled me. And then I listened, I didn't hear anything more, so I'm like, okay. Well, I was thinking about that throughout working because it was still in the back of my mind because I was preparing to hear maybe others or seeing if it was a gunshot, because you never know nowadays. Though I'm not really in a bad neighborhood still. And it brought up that memory that I explained about my ex with the gun. And I literally went into a meltdown. I tried to do the relaxation exercises, remind myself I'm safe, that I'm here now, this was in the past, it's not relevant. Telling myself over and over, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. God, please help me. I gotta calm down. I literally had to put myself in break to get myself off the phones and try to regulate myself and de-escalate. And we're allowed a certain number of breaks during the day, and I actually went over that amount because I was trying to de-escalate. And it was like I had just gone through that incident. And it's because I never felt the full force of those feelings while going through them. So now my body realizes it's safe. So now it's saying, okay, now you can go through it. Which, it's good because it means that I am progressing and that I am healing. But oh my goodness, it's like it'll come up out of the blue. I think it was last week or week before, I had another memory come up of something horrible he told me. This I can repeat. He told me flat out, why didn't you have the decency to die after you gave birth to our youngest child? You should have had the decency to just have him and then die soon after. Well, of course, when he first told me that a couple of years back, I knew it was out of anger, and I knew what he was aiming for. He was aiming to hurt me. So it didn't have the effect that it would have normally on anybody. But when that memory came up, oh my gosh, y'all, again, I went in, this time it wasn't a huge meltdown, it was a mini meltdown, what I call it, where, again, I was feeling the hurt feelings that I didn't even feel when I first heard him say this. And I was talking to my therapist about it, and that's when we came up with the realization that because my body realizes that I am now safe and that I haven't been living constantly in fight or flight mode, that now these feelings are starting to come up. And in a way, it's torture because I would rather not go through all of these situations again. I would have rathered to just had gone through them once when first going through therapy, trauma therapy, and be done with it. But no, now I'm processing the feelings. Now the feelings are coming up and I have to deal with them. And it's hard, y'all. It's hard. But it's also empowering because I'm able to deal with them, go through the emotion, go through the body armor, or the body armoring, but then I can move on from it and remind my body, he's not around anymore. He's no longer even a part of my present, much less my future. He's simply a part of my past. And so that's really awesome to think about. It's hard going through the memories and the flashbacks. But in remembering that all of that, what I've gone through, because y'all, my ex has traumatized me more than the rapist traumatized me, more than the trusted family friend traumatized me when he inappropriately acted with me and inappropriately touched me, and even more than what my father traumatized me. And that says something, because all of that alone, without him, was traumatizing enough. And then the majority of the trauma I'm dealing with is because of him. Because he made me so vulnerable. He made me feel so vulnerable. And so being vulnerable is a big fear for me. It's like right up there with people that have a fear of heights or a fear of spiders. I have a fear of vulnerability. It's scary as anything. But like everything else that I've had to deal with, I'm getting through it. One step at a time. Just like you can get through it too. And you may be years past that trauma, but it doesn't mean you're not going to still have stuff come up. Because I'm having stuff coming up that happened 20 years ago with him. Because it was never dealt with. Or because there's a new catch to that memory that you were just remembering. But be comforted to know that that is in the past, and that's not part of your present, much less your future. Well, I gotta get going. I have a friend that I'm gonna go see, and I got a good bit of a drive. Y'all have a very blessed week. Stay safe over the next week with 4th of July coming up. And be blessed. Bye.